Hello, my name is Tyler Mullen, and I will be your guest speaker for the day. I just want everyone to imagine for a minute. It's the winter of 1984, and you're at home watching the Super Bowl, and this commercial comes on where this woman is running down a hallway with a sledgehammer, and she's running into this movie theater-sized room with a dictator on the screen. Um, giving a speech to everyone in the room, and she just throws the hammer through the screen, and this logo for Apple comes on, and it says, "Let's hope 1984 isn't like 1984." So so then you're just there probably thinking, what is this product? What does it do? How is it going to change my life? Well, in order to explain that, we need to go back to 5 years before that, where Steve Jobs is at a Xerox research facility, and he sees this computer they're using, um, where he notices it's uses pictures instead of the traditional black and white screen where you type the commands into. He just thinks this is gonna be what brings computers into the mainstream. It's gonna be um, what makes it into a household appliance. And so he production. So the planning stage for that goes in there immediately. Now I just want to clarify: Steve Jobs was in many ways a very smart man from a business aspect, but he didn't know a lot of the technical aspects of Apple. That was actually developed by his business partner, Steve Wozniak, who developed more or less single-handedly the Apple One and the Apple II, and he wrote the programming languages it used before he had a prototype. And unfortunately, Jobs gets a lot of credit for those. So during the planning stage, uh, so during the planning stage, they're trying to figure out how much is this going to cost, and it comes out to $100,000. Yeah, changes needed to be made. So they cut down a lot of the. So they had to cut costs. They cut down a lot of the features they had initially. Then they cut down the RAM, so it was about 128K, and Wozniak was not okay with that at all. He felt that they were dumbing down the machine. He felt it was making it simpler just to reach a mass audience. And between that and the plane crash he was in 1981, that was what caused him to leave Apple. Um, so 3 years after, he leaves, the Mac for is ready to be shipped into retail. And there's a lot of hype for it going good. There's a lot of hype in magazines, like Time was one where they bought tons of tons of advertising space, and of course with the Super Bowl commercial where it promises to change society and end all conformity forever. But that's when it reaches stores, and it comes to a total of $2,500, which is just ridiculous. Which seems ridiculous even before you take inflation into account. But you have to remember that at the time, a lot of people that this technology had previously only been available, like laboratories, research facilities, universities. So the fact that this was going to become available in households at all was incredible. Now, Jobs knew a lot of people weren't going to figure this out right away, but he came up with the concept of rent a Mac, which is where people could take a Mac home and try it out for 2 weeks to a month, I believe it was, and and then they would return it for someone else to use. Retailers actually really didn't like this because a lot of times when they got the Macs done, they were often in an unusable. That after a while of this, they would often end up in an unusable state. So they weren't. So a lot of retailers didn't want to carry Apple products after that. And it did sell very well just because just because it was such a big deal. However, a lot of companies realized this is a really good idea. We should make machines like this too. So like Microsoft would develop the very early versions of Windows. Commodore would develop the Amiga, and so a lot of the technology was available not just in what I and many people felt was a better interface, but it also was much cheaper too. And so even though the Mac was a success at first, it actually resulted in Apple's sales declining, and the failure and the failure after that was what caused Steve Jobs to leave Apple at first, and he gave it over to John Scully, who was the CEO of Pepsi at the time. And it's interesting to think about, because even though it's regarded as a failure at its time, it is still just such a core part of computer history, to the point where most people, especially the younger children right now, couldn't imagine a computer without the graphical interfaces, and it created just such a more intuitive way for the technology to reach that level of mainstream. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation. I will now take any questions.